Modern Mahjong is back with our pop quiz round 3. Rounds 1 and 2 of our interactive questions game are available both on YouTube and in our Facebook group Mahjong Community. We have made available PDFs of the questions with and without answers, so it's easy to forward to family and friends and students learning to play. Are you ready? If at any time throughout these 10 questions you need more time, simply press pause and then resume when you're ready for the next answer or question. Question 1. For 3-player Mahjong, what is the official rule regarding the Charleston? Is it A, only the first passes of the Charleston are done, right over left? Is it B, the entire Charleston is mandatory? Or C, the Charleston is omitted? If you guessed C, you are correct. The Charleston is omitted and East begins by discarding a tile. We did a post in Mahjong Community about numbers. When you play 4-player, each player has about 25 picks. You get 12 additional tile picks when you play with 3-player. You also have way more chances of picking jokers and other valuable tiles. This is the reason that the official rule is no Charleston. We do know that many house rules have a Charleston, and there's different ways to have this. We've discussed this also in Facebook in Mahjong Community. Question 2. Who must remain quiet during a game? Is it the bettor, a player with a hand declared dead that agrees their hand is dead, a 5th player that is not betting, all of the above, or A and B? And the answer is the bettor and a player with a hand declared dead must remain silent. A and B. It's proper etiquette for the 5th player or other players that are there but not betting to not talk about hands during the game. If you think etiquette is interesting and want to hear more, we had a terrific panel of players and teachers discuss etiquette, and we shared the replay to youtube.com/modernmahjong. Question 3. Now for a true and false. You can exchange a joker at any time during the game. Is it true or false? It's false. The correct statement is, it must be your turn to exchange a joker. Therefore, you must pick or call, or your hand would be dead. The reason for this is your turn begins when you have 14 tiles. If you exchange a joker first, you do not have 14 tiles yet. Question 4. Another true or false. You can exchange as many jokers as possible on your turn. That's true. You can. You can exchange as many jokers as possible on your turn, and from as many racks, including your own at one time. The rule is you must announce a joker exchange when exchanging on other players' racks, but when exchanging on your own, it's a matter of etiquette. This was a really interesting discussion we had in Facebook group's Mahjong Community. You may notice the picture of our beautiful golden joker Mahjong dice. This is one of the reasons we started this. We began with a beautiful roll and have since expanded to many other styles of dice, jewelry, home goods, clothing. We've even had online virtual tournaments and Zoom talks. It's been a wonderful, wonderful journey. We invite you to check out our directories of teachers, places to play, our Mahjong gifts, our canasta gifts, and more on modernmahjong.com. And now, back to question 5. This is a fill in the blank. The first Charleston is blank unless East is dealt a blank hand. And the blanks are mandatory and heavenly. The first Charleston is mandatory unless East is dealt a heavenly hand. East is the only player with 14 tiles, so no other player can have Mahjong until the picking and discarding starts. Question for you. What if East doesn't have a heavenly hand at the deal, but they have it at the end of the Charleston? Do you know what that's called? It's an earthly hand. Moving on. Question 6. This is a mouthful. So here we have many reasons that a hand may or may not be declared dead. First, too many or too few tiles during the Charleston. Would that be a reason? What about too many or too few tiles after East discards a tile? A player exchanged a joker before calling or picking a tile. From exposure, players can tell there's no such hand. An illegal exposure, or Mahjong an error for exposing tiles when playing concealed. Calling a tile and then saying you don't want the tile. Using the wrong called tile on your rack with your exposure and then discarding. Having an unwinnable hand based on tiles in the sloping portion of your own rack. Having an unwinnable hand based on exposures and discards. Picking out of turn. Using a joker in a pair, single, or grouping of singles. Pushing out the wrong wall. Picking from the wrong end, or exposing Mahjong in error. We'll now go through each of these one at a time. The first one is not a reason for a hand to be declared dead. The game doesn't start until East discards the first tile, so errors before, while you're doing the Charleston, result in the tiles being thrown in, mixed up, the walls built, and a new deal. We understand that probably in many home games, players would say to each other, oh, just pick another tile, because the game hadn't started yet. Feel free to comment or start a post in Mahjong community if you have any questions about what other players do or about rules. Next, too many or too few tiles after East discards the tile. That is a reason for a dead hand. And so are the next two. If a player exchanged a joker before calling or picking, that's a dead hand. If from exposures you can tell there's no such hand, it's an illegal exposure, or there's Mahjong in error because previously they exposed tiles and it's a concealed hand, those are all reasons for a dead hand. You may say, what's an illegal exposure? In previous years, there were pungs of flowers or quints of flowers, and there aren't any on the current card. If somebody exposes 5 flowers, that's a dead hand once they discard. If they put up 5 and realize it before they discard, they can return 1 to their hand and then discard. No harm, no foul. Next, what if somebody calls a tile and then changes their mind? They haven't touched it or moved it. They can change their mind, not a reason for a dead hand. Continuing on, what if you use the wrong call tile on your rack with an exposure and then discard? That's a dead hand, and that's another reason why players shouldn't touch another player's tiles. If another player hands you the wrong tile and you're not paying attention and place it on your rack and then discard, and later it's noticed, your hand would be dead, not the player who handed you the wrong tile. Next, it is not a dead hand if unwinnable hand is based on tiles in your own sloping portion of your rack. If you look at another player and say, oh, I know they need that single 2 dot and I have it, that is not a reason to call their hand dead, because everyone has to see the tiles in exposures or discards for the hand to be dead, which is the next one. Yes, that would be a dead hand. Following, picking out of turn. That's a reason for a dead hand. What about using a joker in a pair, singles, or grouping? Another reason for a dead hand. Finally, what about pushing out the wrong wall? This would be a dead hand if someone pushed out the wrong wall and picked and racked. And if they pick from the wrong end, dead hand if they pick and rack. Finally, if someone exposes Mahjong in error, dead hand. Now on to question 7. What if player A discards and misnames the tile and player B calls it? They call it for an exposure and place it on their rack. Which statements are true? A. The tile cannot be claimed until correctly named. B. Player A, the discarder, has a dead hand. C. If the miscalled tile is wanted for an exposure by B, it cannot be called unless the tile is wanted for Mahjong and the game ends. Player A pays 4 times the value of the hand. Others do not pay. D. If player B didn't realize it was the wrong tile and they expose tiles from their hand and can't use the actual discard, their hand is dead. And the answers are: it is true a tile cannot be claimed until correctly named. It is not true that player A, the discarder, would be dead, have a dead hand because they misnamed a tile. There is no penalty for somebody that misnames a tile. C, if a miscalled tile is wanted for an exposure by player B, it cannot be called unless it's wanted for Mahjong, the miscalled tile itself. The game would end and player A would pay 4 times the value of the hand. Others do not pay. D, if player B didn't realize it was the wrong tile and they expose tiles from their hand and then can't use the actual discard, it is true their hand would be dead. And now on to question 8. Is it true or false? If player A discards and misnames the tile and they have that tile in their hand, do they replace the discard? That statement is false. The correct rule is that if player A discards and misnames the tile and they have that tile in hand, they cannot replace the discard. For example, player A places down a south, but they say 2 dot. They also have a 2 dot in hand, so they go, oops, I meant 2 dot. Down is down. The south remains discarded and player A is committed to discarding the south. They must correctly name the south. Only 2 questions left. Question 9. When discarding a joker, a player can say joker, same, name the tile previously discarded, all of the above, A and C. The answer is all of the above. When discarding a joker, you may say joker, same, or the name of the tile previously discarded. Now, many players get confused by this. Mahjong is a looking and listening game. So by saying same, you are not calling attention that you are discarding a joker. Other players who are looking will realize this. If someone is just listening, they might think you're throwing an actual natural tile, such as a 2 dot. Years ago, if somebody threw a joker after a 2 dot and they said same, the 2 dot could actually be called. There's rules that we shared in Facebook Mahjong community. They were Hasbro rules, and it discusses this. This is no longer the case. A discarded joker cannot be called. It is a dead tile according to the rules. And the last question. A claimed discard must be placed on the flat part of the rack. We have A, B, and C here. Is it a rule, a National Mahjong League rule, and if a player places that discard in the sloping portion of their rack, their hand is dead? Is it a rule, however, there's no penalty if the player places it in the sloping portion of the rack? Or is this only a rule in tournaments? There's a very slight distinction between A and B. So A is incorrect. It is a rule that was mentioned in the latest bulletin. However, there is no penalty under the rule. The penalty portion of this, that a hand would be dead if it's placed directly in the sloping, is a house rule. So the rule provides that you must place it on the top flat part of your rack. Many players are reading into this rule to say that it mandates best practices and that the discard must be placed on the rack first before exposures. While we would love that to be the rule, that is not yet the rule. The rule on the back of the card is that your hand does not begin until you have 14 tiles, which is from picking or claiming a discard. If the best practices was incorporated, that would do away with the exception to the next in line. This has been discussed at length and is a really interesting topic. Finally, C. Is it only a tournament rule? We suggest you check with your tournament directors. Most tournaments will call a player's hand dead if they pick if they claim a discard and place it in their sloping portion of their rack instead of exposing or calling mahjong. So be sure to read that, because that would be a shame to miss out on a mahjong because you placed it in the sloping portion of your rack first rather than on top. Thanks for watching. We hope that you've enjoyed this round. How'd you do? Email us your feedback. We would love to hear from you. modernmahjong@gmail.com. And we would love any questions that you think would be good for next rounds. We love creating these fun videos, sharing rule and strategy tips, and connecting players. We invite you to visit our women-owned small business. We have the perfect gift for you, for your mahjong and canasta playing friends, and yourself on modernmahjong.com. Please like and subscribe. YouTube.com/modernmahjong is our YouTube channel. And if you like and subscribe and click for notifications when we post new videos, you should be notified. So we hope that you join us again. Hope to see you on our upcoming Zooms, and have a great game.